Alright, what is going on, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another video in our amazing programming course. And in this video, we are talking about how we can initialize a struct variable. But before we jump into initializing, let us first of all take a look at the struct definition that we have. So, what we have here is basically struct point with two fields, int x and int y. Okay, simply two fields under the roof of this new structure called point. And we are using the type definition to specify that instead of using struct point to create different variables and work with data types of the new type struct point that we created, instead of using that, we can use simply point with a capital P in this example. Okay, so point will be used to represent the type that we just created, this new type, this new user-defined structure called point. All right, so far so good? Awesome. So at this moment, we still don't have any instances of the variable, okay, any instances of the class point, but what we are going to do now is to see maybe once again how to declare a point variable and basically how we can initialize in various ways. Okay, so let us start. So the first thing that we are going to take a look at is this point p1. And all it does is just to declare a point variable without any initialization. So if we will simply draw it, it will look like this. There will be p1 and it's going to have two fields. The first member is x, the second one is y, and it has some garbage values inside of it. Okay, so we simply created a bigger box called p1 with two members. The second option is initializing a point variable when members are in order. So we know that basically after just creating p1, we could use p1.x equals to some value and p1.y equals to some other value, right? There is no problem using the assigning operation, but sometimes we would like to make the initialization right away, okay, whenever we know the values themselves. So instead of spreading it into a couple of rows, we can just write it down in one command. So in this command, point p2, and using the curly brackets, what we are getting is simply a variable called p2. It is of type, of course, point. And then whenever we use the curly brackets, we simply start filling, or at least hoping to filling the values for the data members of the struct. So we remember the first one is x, the second one is y. So we simply put a value of 5 right here and 7 right here. And there you go. You created your variable p2 with these two data members and these two values for each of them. Okay. Another option for initialization is to use the designated initializer. So how it looks like. We create a new variable called p3 and it's of type point. And this variable is going basically to be initialized with specifically, or let's say explicitly specifying what members should have what values at the initialization step. So we specify .x, it means like we've written p3.x equals to 3 and p3.y equals to 4. So basically p3 is going to look like this. 3 and 4, that's the x and that's the y. Okay? Designated initializer, specifying exactly to what members of the class we want to put exactly what value. All right? Awesome. Now, basically, so far we used all of the things in order, right? Specifying first of all the x and then the y, but there may be times that we would like to specify it not in order. So this way we can always, or basically hopefully always, try using the designated initializer and use the values for each of the members in kind of out of order. So that means that we will not necessarily specify as the first value in this initializer. It doesn't necessarily have to be of a it doesn't necessarily have to be x. Okay, we can specify that first of all we will specify the y value and then the x. Okay, and basically what we will get is simply p4 with the values of 2 and 10. Okay, so that's just a side note for you to be familiar with. Any questions? Good. So now we use the designated initializer. Other members are initialized with 0. So this basically refers to the fact that whenever we create a variable of some user-defined type, then we do not necessarily have to specify and to initialize all of its data members. Okay, maybe sometimes we don't know what value should some member have. So in this case, what we've done is basically we created p5, and there are two fields. The first one is x, and it has the value of 1. And the second one is y, and we will say that it will not be with an empty value or some garbage value. We will say that by using this designated initializer, other members that were not specified in this initializer step will be initialized with the value of 0. So it will look like this. Okay? So what we've done here is basically we've seen a couple of options to initialize a variable of a user-defined type. In this case, it's very simple because we have only two fields of a type int, but it does not necessarily have to be this way. We know that the fields, the members of a certain user-defined struct, they may be also of different types. We may have a double, we may have a float, we may have a lot of other things. So we can also have arrays and so on and so forth. It doesn't really matter. Just make sure that whenever you initialize, that the value you are trying to assign to a certain member, that it simply makes sense. You would not want to take a string and to assign it to an integer. Okay? And also probably not the other way around. Good. So the last thing that I want to do in this demonstration is basically let's run the debugger and see for ourselves how we can simply take a look at these 5 variables that we've created and what basically they hold, so that this way you will know kind of more confident about the things that I've just mentioned. So if we take a look, we can see that here at the locals section in the debugger, we are going to see all of the variables. Okay, I'm simply using the debugging process. All of the variables that we've created, because we are now at the last row in the main function, and we can see P1, P2, P3, P4, and P5. And if we open them up, we will be able to see all the values inside of them, but also we can see it right here, the value for the field X and the value for field Y. So P1 is not initialized, right? You remember, P1 is not initialized with anything. So in this case, we simply have some garbage values inside of these X and Y data members. P2 has the values of 5 and 7. P3, using the designated initializer, has the values of 3 and 4. And point P4, we can see for ourselves that the Y data member was initialized with the value of 10, although it was done before we initialized the value of X, which is 2 in this case. Awesome. Finally, we can take a look at P5, and P5, we said that we will initialize just part of its data members. So we initialized the X data member with a value of 1, and we can see that the other value for the other data member was implicitly set to be 0. Awesome. So yeah, this is it for this video, guys, and now you know how to initialize. Now you know how to initialize basically a variable of some structure, in this case of a point struct. Okay, so this technique may be applied to various structs. That's basically up to you to decide where it should be applied. So as always, thank you guys for watching. Keep on practicing, keep on moving forward, and you are about to succeed. I'll see you next time.